It's the holiday season. The Seahawks are hoping to cook up an NFC West title. What ingredients are going to be necessary to get it done with 4 games left to play? We're going to be breaking it all down here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s listening in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it, whether you're listening in from Redmond, Oregon, or Corpus Christi, Texas. Thanks for making Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Seahawks gearing up for a matchup with the visiting Colts on Sunday. A lot of fun storylines that we're going to continue to dive into in this game coming up on Sunday. We've got key matchups to break down today. Seahawks offense against Colts defense and vice versa. Brought courtesy of our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Now for your lead story here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Sitting at 10-3, the Seahawks are atop the NFC West alongside the Los Angeles Rams because they lost the lone head-to-head matchup so far between those teams. As we discussed yesterday, Rob, Mike Macdonald's team is the #5 seed if the playoffs started today, but they still have a lot of opportunities to get that West championship and potentially the #1 seed. And in the spirit of the holiday season, when everybody is baking tasty treats, it's time for us to discuss what the Seahawks have to do to build a recipe to win this division, or maybe win the NFC and get the #1 seed for the postseason. And as you and I both know, sometimes there's surprises with what makes a really good Christmas cookie. So that may be the case here with what makes a good finish to the season for the Seattle Seahawks to get their first NFC West title since 2020.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of different ways that we can take this conversation, Corbin. And so I tried to ignore the obvious. I mean, obviously, you got to stay healthy. Obviously, you want to control the number of turnovers that that you have. So something like that, it kind of goes without saying. But I have basically a 3-step recipe. I mean, it's like our former sponsor, Blue Apron, has got me a little bit spoiled here. If you just kind of follow what you're supposed to do, then it's pretty simple. You're going to have an amazing meal. And so I think if the Seahawks follow these 3 steps, then they are going to wind up being the NFC West divisional champion. And by that matter, I also think that they're going to be the NFC's #1 seed, have the bye, and quite possibly ride that home crowd all the way to the Super Bowl. My first step here is I think that you have to identify and stick to the plan along the interior of the offensive line. We all know that Jalen Sundell returned back to the practice field, albeit on a limited basis. I do believe that Jalen Sundell is an upgrade over Olu Oluwatimi in the passing game. However, I think that Olu Oluwatimi is a better run blocker. I think the Seahawks have to figure out their strategy, what they want to prioritize there. For my money, I would stick with Olu Oluwatimi. I think that running the football at this point in the season is more important. That is who I would stick with at the center position. It remains to be seen what the Seahawks are going to do, of course. I've been wrong before. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they wound up going with Jalen Sundell. But whatever they choose, I'd like to think that they will stick with that and develop some camaraderie along the offensive line. Obviously, they already had that before with Sundell. They have it right now with Oluwatimi, and that's why I would stick with that. And I'll kind of go back to your ideas here for a moment before I jump back in with my second and third step to the recipe to create the perfect food for Seahawks success.
Yeah, you and I think if we were on a Food Network show, there'd be people like, man, they've got different recipes going on here. I'm starting Jalen Sundell. That was actually going to be my first thing that I was going to mention, because I think Anthony Bradford's playing good enough football here the last few weeks. I'm not making a change there. But I look at what Seattle's passing game did when Jalen Sundell was in the starting lineup. Oluwatimi has had some issues picking up twist stunts, passing them off, and that has led to more hits on Sam Darnold than what he was getting early in the season. I still believe Jalen Sundell was getting there in the run blocking department. Maybe not the enforcer, the punisher that Oluwatimi is, but I think he is such a big upgrade in the pass protection aspect and his athleticism in this scheme that I'm plugging him in. To me, that is the first part of this recipe is I'm getting Jalen Sundell back in that lineup. And I'm hoping that I can get that passing game rolling that I had before Sundell went down early in that Cardinals game where this passing game was unstoppable much of the time early on in the season. And I think Sundell was a bigger part of that than what people realize. So that's the first ingredient for me. The second one, you've got to find a way to continue to play well on early downs. That, to me, is the biggest difference for this team, and that's on both sides of the ball. This isn't just strictly an offensive or defensive thing. When the Seahawks defense is rolling, they're stuffing the run or they are getting pressures early and they are getting teams into second and third and long, and then that front four and some of the mixing in blitzes can get after teams, can get after opposing quarterbacks. And offensively, we just saw the difference in the second half in this Falcons game on Sunday. How many times the Seahawks had 3rd and 5 or less? They went 4 for 6 on third down in the second half. First half, they were 2 for 7, and they had a lot of third and longs with negative plays and sacks. They have to limit those. If this offense gets out of its own way and they don't let the defense have those disruptive negative plays, it is a very difficult offense to stop. I think for the Seahawks to finish strong, though, that has got to be a pinnacle here on both sides of the ball. You've got to win on early downs and give yourself advantageous third down opportunities.
Not only on early downs, I think you make an excellent argument there. I think especially in the red zone. And that is an area, of course, that Seattle has struggled for much of this season. And so I do think that it is critical that Seattle identifies a second and third target that they want to feature at times and perhaps even intentionally avoid JSN, as crazy as that might sound. In a game that feels as winnable as this game with the Indianapolis Colts, so we're going to be talking about the individual matchups here in a couple of moments. But it does feel like this is a winnable game, especially against the Indianapolis secondary that is struggling with health. That you might be able to get Cooper Kupp rolling. Obviously, he had a touchdown reception in last week's victory. You might be able to get Rashid Shaheed rolling. Maybe you get Torrey Horton back onto the field, hopefully sooner rather than later. Maybe it's A.J. Barner. Whoever it is, I do think if Seattle is going to have sustained success throughout these last 4 weeks and getting that NFC West crown, as well as success in the playoffs, then there's got to be somebody other than Jackson Smith and Jigba who Sam Darnold is looking for consistently in the red zone to get 6 rather than the 3-point field goals of Jason Myers, who leads the NFL in field goals at this point. But I think that is not going to be something that is going to result in the Seattle actually winning playoff games especially if they have to go on the road.
And my last one here, Rob, look, you mentioned it earlier. Turnovers are always going to be part of the discussion, but I'm not going to point at Sam Darnold. I'm not going to point at guys fumbling the football. I'm not going to point at specific guys making specific plays. Seattle has got to win the turnover margin in all 4 of their last 4 games. I think if you want to win out, they have got to win the turnover battle, particularly when you play the Rams. Like, that's been the equalizer in these games against LA. The Rams don't turn the ball over very much, and the Seahawks turn it over a lot. And that is the recipe here. You have got to find a way to create more turnovers than what you give up. I think if the Seahawks can do that, the talent rises to the top when you are not making mistakes and you are forcing the other team to create. And I think Seattle has as talented of a roster as anybody in the league. So it might seem simple, but there's a reason that it's easier said than done to do that in this league. Other teams are getting paid too, and Seattle's playing some good teams down the stretch. You've got to find a way, though, to coax more turnovers than what you are giving up. And I think this offense can really take over games if they're not making some of the mistakes they've made in large portions of this season.
Yeah, no question about it. And I'm actually going to throw out the little sprinkles on top of those Christmas cookies, so to speak, here to kind of wrap up my thoughts as far as Seattle's recipe for NFC West supremacy. And that be something that, again, is kind of counter to what most NFL teams would tell you that you should do. I think the Seahawks should be scoreboard watching a little bit for exactly the same reason that what you just mentioned, Corbin. The Seahawks face a pretty daunting schedule coming up. The Los Angeles Rams, the only team that's, percentage points essentially ahead of them, face a relatively easy, gauntlet or I guess I should say easy slate of opponents coming up. And I do think that Seattle should be paying attention to what their opponents are doing. Just because the fact I think that they're going to be successful. And because this is as competitive as a team as it is, I think as they are going to see the LA Rams potentially win 3 of the next 4 games down the stretch, perhaps the only loss being to the Seahawks in Seattle on Thursday Night Football. That, I think, can also be a motivating factor. Watch what the Chicago Bears are doing. Watch what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are doing. I know that sounds, again, counter to the argument. Mike McDonald wants his team focused on the task at hand. But at the same time, I also think that it can be a motivating factor for a team that appears to love football as much as this Seahawks squad appears to do.
When we come back, it's Matchup Wednesday. We're going to be diving into the Seahawks offense against the Indianapolis Colts defense, the key positional battles to watch. That's coming up next here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode's brought your way by Mint Mobile. There's no reason to let big wireless drain your wallet, especially during the holidays. Right now, Mint Mobile is running their best deal of the year. All their unlimited plans are 50% off. That means you can lock in 3, 6, or even 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. It's the easiest way to take your overpriced phone bill and give it the full Scrooge treatment. And what makes this even better is how simple Mint makes the switch. There's no contracts, no nonsense, just real savings and real quality service. Setup takes only a few minutes. You can bring your own phone and number without any issues. And the service is fast, super reliable, even on the go. Take your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint Mobile plans at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Limited time offer, upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plans required, $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees, initial plan term only. More than 35 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. Welcome back to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a notch and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Seahawks with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and much more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Head on over to lockedonseahawks.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Again, that's lockedonseahawks.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. As we do every Wednesday, it's time to dive into the key matchups for the Seahawks' upcoming game. The banged-up Indianapolis Colts coming to town, and a Colts team that, when you look at where they're at right now, they're 8-5. They still have a respectable record. The issue is they have been heading in the wrong direction after a really strong start. They just lost their starting quarterback for the rest of the season with Daniel Jones rupturing his Achilles, going to undergo surgery for that. They just signed Phillip Rivers off the street to their practice squad. He hasn't played in an NFL game in 5 years. So there's a lot going on in Indianapolis, and the injuries have not been limited to the offensive side of the football. And I think that's what lends itself to Seattle's biggest advantage going into this game. You could argue that it might be the biggest advantage on either side of the football. The Colts are absolutely decimated at the cornerback position. Now, they still have a very good nickel defender in Kenny Moore. He is going to be available in this game, but Travarius Ward, Rob, we know him from his days in San Francisco, a really good player, just suffered his 3rd concussion. He was put on injured reserve. He's done for the year. He might not play again with that many concussions. That's certainly something to watch. Sauce Gardner, who they acquired for a first-round pick from the Jets at the trade deadline, is dealing with a calf injury. Very unlikely he's going to play this week. They're playing the likes of Jalen Jones and Mekhi Blackman in the secondary, they're starting boundary corners. I mean, they're down to like their 5th and 6th stringers compared to where they were at the beginning of the season. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Rashid Shaheed and Cooper Kupp, they have got to be licking their chops with this opportunity against a very undermanned secondary in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Just because on paper, when the Indianapolis Colts are healthy now with Sauce Gardner and Charvarius Ward, this is one of the better cornerback rooms in all of the NFL when you add in the nickel corner Kenny Moore as well. And look, I think that Jalen Jones and Mekhi Blackman are quality NFL players, just not headline starters. And so I do think that this is an opportunity for Seattle to do some things in the passing game. That remains to be seen what the weather is going to be like. And obviously you have to protect Sam Darnold a little bit, but we just got through with the conversation where I was arguing that Seattle needed to try to be intentional in finding a second or third target, especially in the red zone, whether it be Cooper Kupp, whether it be Rashid Shaheed, hell, it could be Cody White, it could be Jake Bobo. I do think that this is an Indianapolis Colts secondary that is, it's a little bit vulnerable. And I'm specifically going to talk about Blackman here for a moment. Look, he's undersized, 5'11", 178 pounds, got good speed, 4.4s, but he is a guy that doesn't have the size. So I think a guy like a Jake Bobo, a Cody White might be able to just kind of post up on him a little bit. And the same thing when it comes to Jalen Jones. Look, he's got the size. He's 6'2", 205 pounds, running a 4.57 back in the day coming out of Texas A&M. So that he is a player that I think if you can line up Rashid Shaheed on him one-on-one, perhaps that'd be the big play opportunity to Sam Darnold over the top that we've been looking for. And obviously, Jackson Smith and Jigba has the opportunity to truly splash in the Seattle rain on Sunday.
There may not be a Sauce Gardner on the field, but if you're looking for a positive injury report for the Indianapolis Colts or a positive news development, DeForest Buckner, who has been a kryptonite player for the Seahawks dating back to his time in San Francisco, Seahawks fans know all about DeForest Buckner. He's been on injury reserve for several weeks with a neck injury. They opened his practice window this week. Who knows if he's going to be available to play on Sunday or not, but with their season on the line, big DeForest Buckner has a chance to play in this game, which, look, Gray Zabel's playing good football. We've seen Oluwatimi step up. Who knows if he's in the lineup or Sundell's in the lineup. Anthony Bradford's playing better as of late. But DeForest Buckner, if he's right, he's as good as any defensive tackle in the NFL. And he could single-handedly turn a pass rush that's been a pumpkin in the last month without him. He could reinvigorate them immediately and have a positive domino effect on everyone else around him, both as a run defender and a pass rusher. So to me, that is a X factor to watch here. If he's not playing, this is a kind of undersized interior defensive line that hasn't been overly effective defending the run or the pass as of late. But Buckner is that force multiplier, as Mike McDonald likes to call it, that can make everyone else around him better. That could make this a tough matchup for the interior offensive line for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, he reminds me in so many ways of Leonard Williams, and I don't use that comparison lightly. I just think that they are two of the perennially underrated, underappreciated defensive tackles in all of the NFL. They can play just about anywhere up and down the line of scrimmage. They both are roughly 6'5", 6'6", 300 pounds, and very little of it is around their belly. They are just very well distributed, very long arms, incredibly powerful players. Look, DeForest Buckner, as you mentioned, Corbin, has been out for the last 4 games with that neck injury. He still leads the team in tackles for loss with 9. He leads the team with quarterback hurries with 13. He's second in sacks with 4. I mean, the Indianapolis Colts have allowed a 100-plus yard rusher each of the last 4 games that he's been out. They allowed that only 4 of the first 9 games in which he was on the field. So, yeah, force multiplier, I think, is a great way of describing what DeForest Buckner is able to bring to the Colts. So that's one of the reasons why I do think that Seattle might want to consider the shorter, squattier, more powerful Oluwatimi in this particular game. I certainly understand the argument for Jalen Sundell as well, also a very good player. But I do think that this is a game in which the Colts, best players on the defensive line are actually in the interior if Buckner is available. Look, they got some talent on the outside. A Morris Trophy Award winner as Leatu Latu on the outside. A player that I am a big fan of, JT Tuialamolo, who is coming back to the Seattle area for this game. So he's going to be extra motivated. Now, he hasn't gotten the field nearly as much as I thought that he would be as a second-round pick, but still, the point is this is the Indianapolis Colts team that has some talent along the defensive line, but there is no question about it. The headliner is DeForest Buckner. The Seahawks would be fortunate if he doesn't play in this game, but I have a feeling that he is going to play in this game. He went to Panama, for crying out loud, to get stem cell treatment just to get back onto the field for the Colts, and he is the kind of leader that's going to do anything to get on the field as quickly as he can. Considering the injury to Daniel Jones, I do think that he is the kind of leader that is going to try and just basically put the Colts on his shoulders and try to carry them to the surprise victory in Seattle this week.
Yeah, I agree with you that is the kind of player that will put everything on the line. And there's some guys in the Colts that have not necessarily done that in the last 4 or 5 years, but DeForest Buckner is one of those glue guys that could absolutely galvanize that entire defense with him returning. If he plays in this game, I'm not betting against him either, because historically, if he is good enough to play, he is going to get out there. He's going to find a way to suit up. If there's another matchup that I think the Seahawks could potentially exploit in this game, Indianapolis has had some issues with a revolving door at linebacker the last couple of years, ever since Shaquille Leonard's career was just derailed by injuries. They have had struggles there. Jermaine Pratt came in mid-season after the Raiders cut him. And look, the Raiders defense is not anything great. Let's just face it. They're one of the worst in the NFL. To be released from there, I know a lot of Seahawks fans were asking if he might be a guy they would target. They never had any interest in Jermaine Pratt. But at this point of his career, coverage has been more of a liability for him, especially when he gets one-on-one with athletic running backs. And he's had some missed tackles this year as well that led to his departure from Las Vegas. I think Zach Charbonnet and Ken Walker, both in the run game and in the passing game, especially if Sam Darnold's got to do more of the check down stuff because DeForest Buckner and company are making some things happen up front. I think this is a matchup that the running backs in the passing game can do some damage against both Zaire Franklin and Jermaine Pratt.
I 100% agree with you. I think with Jermaine Pratt, I mean, you're talking about a bigger guy. He's 6'3", 250 pounds. And this is a big linebacker. And he is always, even at his best with the Cincinnati Bengals, he was still a guy that you could kind of, attack a little bit with backs, in the flat, and maybe they can make somebody miss and they're gone just because he lacks that recovery speed. Now, he is still a thumper, but at the same time, I do think that this is a game where maybe Kenneth Walker III might be able to, show off some of his agility and perhaps make a big play as a receiver out of the backfield as well as a runner. Zaire Franklin, on the other hand, is kind of that classic inside linebacker, 6 foot, 235 pounder. But at the same time, he also doesn't have the greatest speed to the outside. So look, I think that Zach Charbonnet, his consistency to me is one of the reasons why I think that he is so relied upon on third down and in the red zone. But this feels like a game that Kenneth Walker III might be able to break the long run that we've been expecting all season long from him.
Coming up next, we are going to flip the script. The Seahawks defense going up against Phillip Rivers. We don't know who's going to be under center just yet, but we're going to be looking at the key matchups for Seattle's defense taking on a banged up Indianapolis offense. That'll be coming up next year on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. If a running back like Ken Walker III gets hot, or a defense like the Seahawks tightens up in the second half, or the momentum flips after a turnover, FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly, player props updating as guys heat up. You can bet on the next touchdown scored, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast. and so can you. Welcome back to Matchup Wednesday here on Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to all the diehard 12s out there for tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks and Colts getting ready for a Week 15 matchup at Lumen Field. Expectation is it's going to be rainy, which, unless you've been under a rock, that should not come as a surprise with where things have been at as of late in the Pacific Northwest. But expect some torrential downpours potentially on Sunday, which I find fascinating when we look at this matchup. Seahawks defense against the Colts offense. We don't know who's going to be playing the quarterback position. I can't wait to talk to our Locked On Colts colleagues and see where they think this is heading. At this point, I'm expecting it is going to be Phillip Rivers. To me, it's not a joke anymore. We've seen him in uniform doing press conferences and throwing footballs. I just have a feeling that it is going to be Phillip Rivers. But I think when we're looking at these matchups, it's all about everybody around whoever is playing quarterback, because they are going to need whoever's playing QB to be a facilitator in this game. And that's just the way it's going to have to be with their quarterback situation.
Yeah, and I do think that there is a good possibility that that it is Phillip Rivers. The limited opportunities that the Indianapolis media had to watch practice today, Phillip Rivers had taken all of the first team snaps. Then it was Riley Leonard after that. So that certainly is indication. Mike McDonald said it. So it said himself that the Seahawks think that the Seahawks are preparing as if Phillip Rivers is going to play. So again, I think this has gone from being perhaps kind of a comic idea to the reality. That said, and Phillip Rivers sounds like he's been coaching at the high school level. He has been speaking with Shane Steichen about the offense that Phillip Rivers has been coaching and the one that Steichen has brought to the Indianapolis Colts. And apparently they are very, very similar styles of offense. All that's great. At the same time, Phillip Rivers does not have the wheels. He never had the wheels to really play the same type of role that Daniel Jones does or has for the Indianapolis Colts, for what Anthony Richardson previously brought to the Indianapolis Colts as a true dual threat quarterback, a guy who's going to take some quarterback reads, some quarterback options, is going to do some bootlegs. That's not Phillip Rivers' game. So I am fascinated to kind of see how effective, if Rivers does play, how effective he is. If they just go back to the old school days of Phillip Rivers as a member of the Chargers or something, basically just spreading the field and allowing him to use his arm and his competitiveness. I'm fascinated. I'm a huge Phillip Rivers fan, have been for an awful long time. At the same time, I do think that this is as formidable of a challenge as any quarterback is going to face. And, in the NFL, considering how well the Seahawks is playing in these weather conditions. And again, the fact that he is basically going to have 5 days of practice with the club to do this, to me, is something borderline, crazy talk as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and that really boils down to what's in front of him, because I think that might be the one thing that, when you look at this matchup, may help him, is the fact that the Colts offensive line has generally been pretty darn good this year. With that being said, away from Quentin Nelson, you've got Gonzalez in the inside, formerly of Pittsburgh, their other guard. They had turnover at that position in center. They lost both Ryan Kelly and Will Fries to Minnesota in free agency. So they've had to turn those positions over. Braden Smith, one of their tackles, unlikely to play this week as well. So they're going to be playing a 4th-round pick in his place. It does feel like things have been kind of starting to break a little bit up front, even with a perennial All-Pro like Quentin Nelson in the middle, where you can have Leonard Williams, Jaron Reed, Byron Murphy II and company take over. And if you've got a statue like Phillip Rivers, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, because he had a great career playing that way, getting the football out quickly. But if he's holding on to the ball at all at this age and not playing the last 5 years, this has a chance to get really ugly with this pass rush, getting after him, because Indianapolis has had more trouble doing that in pass protection for the last 4 or 5 games.
And that's one of the reasons why I think that whether it be Phillip Rivers or whether it be Riley Leonard or whoever it may be at the quarterback position for the Colts, then they have to feature Jonathan Taylor, obviously. I mean, he leads the NFL in rushing yards, but this is one of those, and we often say this, get your popcorn ready kind of matchups, but I think that it absolutely is, in that this is the NFL's best run defense, or at least historically. I mean, the Seahawks have not allowed a 100-plus yard rusher in 22 consecutive games. That's far and away the longest streak currently in the NFL right now. And again, Jonathan Taylor is just running over and past, everybody all season long. So Mike McDonald again said that basically this is in his words, he said maybe the fastest back that they faced all year long. And that is coming on the heels of going up against Bijan Robinson and the Falcons last week. So I do think that this is a formidable matchup. I think that the Colts are always going to be leaning on their star running back, but especially so in this game. And I do like the Colts offensive line. Bernard Raymond, at the left tackle position. If Braden Smith is available at the right tackle position, those are two of the better run blocking off the tackles in all of the league. And obviously the Colts have arguably the best offensive lineman in the entire league in Quentin Nelson at the left guard spot. So even with the loss of Ryan Kelly and Will Fries in free agency, this is still a very good offensive line. But again, a lot of it is going to be dependent on who the quarterback is and how effective they can be.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jonathan Taylor. Like the Colts offense, regardless of who's playing QB, it starts and ends with Jonathan Taylor. He is their featured weapon. They do have a first-round pick in Tyler Warren, who also has had a really good rookie season. And interestingly, he was a high school quarterback. He played some Wildcat QB at Penn State. I will not be surprised if Shane Steichen goes back into that bag of tricks this week with the quarterback situation and mixes in Tyler Warren with some direct snaps to the tight end. If you think the barnyard is fancy, wait till you see the actual Wildcat here with Warren. So that's going to fall on the linebackers. They're going to have the responsibility dealing with both those guys, and Warren in the passing game. That can be a mismatch problem for any linebacker, including Seattle's, who, quite frankly, are on the smaller side, and Tyler Warren's a really good-sized player. So that could be a physical mismatch there dealing with Warren. That's the one reason the Colts have some hope in this matchup, those two players with their abilities at the running back and tight end position.
Yeah, and we all know that Seattle struggled, to cover tight ends. I mean, that has been something that has been an issue going back to the Pete Carroll era, and certainly here with Mike McDonald as well. Tyler Warren is a special player. And so I do think that he can be very effective. Obviously, a lot of the time, Seattle is using linebackers to cover tight ends. At times, they're safety. I think this is a particularly intriguing matchup for Nick Emmanwori. I mean, what's the point of having all of that size in Nick Emmanwori if you cannot occasionally match him up one-on-one against a tight end like the 6'6", 255-pound Tyler Warren? So whether he is playing that wildcat quarterback, whether he's lined up as a slot receiver, whereas he's playing more of a traditional tight end, hand in the dirt type of tight end, or on the wing, I do think that Emmanwori might be able to basically slide from his nickel and safety spot and basically handle him one-on-one. And that would be about as exciting of a matchup of two rookies as you're probably going to get all season long.
And I will say this, the Colts still have a lot of skill talent. I mean, we just mentioned Taylor and Warren on the outside. Michael Pittman is a big-bodied receiver that can win downfield. He's going to have some size advantage against a number of Seattle's defenders, though Reek Woolen is one of the few in the league that size-wise can match up with him. You've got Downs, who plays in the slot, and on the outside, this more of a shifty, speedy, smaller receiver that can win downfield, can create some after the catch. And then Pierce out of Cincinnati, I think, is one of the most underrated receivers in the league. And the guy is a home run hitter. He can nail you downfield. He's got good size, real good at seeing the football and can high point the football. The question's going to be, do they have anybody that can get the ball downfield to these guys? Because that wasn't Phillip Rivers' strength before he retired. He, at that point, had a weak pop gun arm, more of the quick passing game. Downs might be a player, though, in this particular matchup that Seattle's corners are going to have to worry about because of his ability to catch and run. that may be somebody that Phillip Rivers leans on if indeed he's the one starting. And even Riley Leonard, that might be where he turns, because Leonard isn't known for his arm strength either.
No, he's not. I would expect that both of them are going to be focusing on downs, Jonathan Taylor and then Tyler Warren. However, if Seattle's pass rush is not as effective, we know that has kind of gone up and down a little bit. If they are not effective, then I do think that both Rivers and Riley Leonard have enough touch on the ball that they might be able to throw the ball up early, and that's where Pierce can get you. Pierce is the receiver that scares me the most, just because of his ability to take it to the house, and we haven't seen anybody be able to beat Seattle in the deep passing game essentially all season long, with the exception of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But again, that is the matchup that spooks me just a little bit, just because I do think that the Colts are going to be looking to try and silence that crowd, and if the weather is a factor and Seattle is slipping around a little bit, one misstep and Alex Pierce has the legitimate 4.4 speed to get behind a cornerback. So this is one of those games where you got to make sure that Rick Woolen or whoever it is truly locked in all game long, because again, Pierce is one of those kind of savvy route runners, and that he is very effective in getting a step and then can take it to the house.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, it's Crossover Thursday. I'll be teaming up with Locked On Colts. We're going to get the latest on the quarterback situation. Who is going to start on Sunday, or is it still a mystery, and much more. Make sure to listen in. That'll be dropping early Thursday morning. Thanks for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Go Hawks.